So hello and welcome back, everyone, to the second installment of our 30 Minutes of Growth webinar series. My name is Erin Beal, and I am the Talent Development Evangelist here at GrowthSpace, and I'm going to be your host for today's session. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, we are very excited to welcome you into our learning community. This space was created just for you, for our L&D professionals, our HR, our OD professionals, and our goal is to give you exactly what the title promises, right? 30 minutes of growth. This should be an opportunity to learn from and hopefully be inspired by some of the top L&D experts across the globe, all in just a short 30 minutes. So today we're going to discuss how to enhance workforce upskilling through strategic segmentation. So we'll take a look at what that means and how to build the right programs for the right employee audiences to make the biggest impact across your organization. So to kick off our deep dive into this topic, I'm going to start by introducing you to today's esteemed guest speaker, Paul Lesser. So Paul is a seasoned HR executive who specializes in aligning human capital strategies for global success. As the former head of talent acquisition, development, and learning at Fidelity Investments, he led transformative initiatives to drive organizational performance. Through PHL Talent Advisory Services, he now offers consulting to Fortune 500 companies and emerging firms, focusing on strategic alignment and operational excellence. So welcome, Paul. We're very excited to have you here today.
Great. Thanks for having me and looking forward to the conversation.
Perfect. Sharing the virtual stage today, we also have our very own GrowthSpace co-founder and CEO, Omer Glass. So Omer founded GrowthSpace after a long career in management consulting and is a keynote speaker at leading L&D conferences worldwide. So welcome, Omer, as well.
Thank you so much.
All right, so let's get right into it. Let's jump into our discussion about strategic segmentation. So for those of you who are on the line, as we're going through the session today, if you have any questions, please feel free to throw them into the chat. We plan to schedule to save some time at the end to get to everyone's questions. So getting right into it. So Paul, I'm going to start off by asking you to just define strategic segmentation. What does it actually mean? And how does it enhance the effectiveness of talent development programs?
No, thanks again, Erin. And I think when you think about strategic segmentation, it really comes down to, from your HR organization, your leadership team, what are the priorities that your organization has? And more importantly, how does leaders, managers, and overall human capital contribute to that? And based on, I think, understanding those priorities, I think is where you can start to then build a strategy around segmentation. I know we're going to talk a bit more specifics, but I think it's really important for organizations to really have clear goals and objectives of what they're trying to accomplish. And then more importantly, then how do the HR professionals, the learning professionals, establish a program and a prioritization to help individuals, help the organization meet those goals. So I think it's a really important topic because I think companies right now are really struggling with the fact of we have some really key priorities. We've got a lot of change in our workforce. We need to develop our people, but there's got to be a strategy around that. And I think prioritization is, first of all, one of the most important aspects.
Great, thank you. Omer, did you have anything to share?
Yeah, I think maybe the number one question I'm getting from our customers who are primarily Fortune 500s is what other customers are doing, right? Usually that's the number one question. And maybe the second question would be who is successful in the market? So that's kind of like two questions I'm getting asked by like CHROs, CLOs. And I think usually my answer is there is no one answer, but those who are successful, to your second question, are basically those who focus. Because eventually you have limited budget and you have limited resources and limited headcount, and you can not do everything, right? You cannot support everyone, but if you're really focused and trying to create very, very high impact within specific groups in order to achieve a greater goal, connecting to what Paul said, then you're basically successful. I'm wondering, Paul, if you have like a good example. Again, you spent, I believe, like 3 decades at the Fidelity, like all the way up to SVP HR. what would be like the maybe one program that you say, I really focused on one population connected to one specific initiative or something that was basically directed from the CEO or something like that, that really created a lot of impact?
Sure. I think as I think about my career and I think about the question you just asked, Omar, one of the key challenges I think that my company had, and I think other companies have as well, is ensuring that employees understand what are the real goals and objectives of the firm this year, and more importantly, how do you contribute to that? So we realized that, like a lot of organizations, the executives will have a message, then their team will have a message. And as it goes down into the organization, we used to refer to it as the frozen middle, where somehow the message really wasn't getting established. So from a development perspective, one of the things that we worked on, which I think was really important, was working with our first and second line managers to get better at communicating what are the goals and objectives of the firm. How does your role and our function contribute to that? And more importantly, what are the key success factors that will contribute to us being successful? Because everybody, I think, goes into work with best of intentions every day. They want to do the best job they can. They want to contribute to the mission. They want to contribute to the profitability and the growth of the organization. But there's nothing worse than employees being like, okay, but how do I actually do that? And helping managers at that stage connect the dots, that individuals understood why maybe we were measuring call time a certain way, or why we were looking at how when we were building software, we were measuring certain number of defects that we didn't want to have based on, again, getting that out to our customers as quickly as possible. It was just really important to connect those dots. And what we found is that a lot of managers they just weren't great at it. They were good at being able to manage day-to-day tasks, but I think one of the areas that we prioritize is that overall communication and connectivity of goals and objectives to the greater good of the firm. So
Interesting. So you didn't only focus on a specific population, but you also focused on specific skills that you thought that will achieve the biggest impact.
correct. I think that the population is important. And again, I mentioned earlier, I think prioritization is very important. But then it's like, okay, the question is, so what? What now if we focus in this group, what's going to be the impact? And I'm sure a lot of the great people that are on the webinar today have a lot of data about how associates feel as being part of the company and what are some of those challenges and what are some of the disconnects. And I think being able to tie that work together and then understanding, more importantly, how development plays into the improvement and execution in a number of those areas. I think that's a really important skill that's come to fruition that executives and leaders are asking for. They want their organizations to continue to get better, and more importantly, they want to see results and they want to see that needle move, that they're making progress in those areas.
So you talked a little bit about the new manager program. Can you think of another example that where segmentation was really successful and you can share that?
Sure. Like a lot of companies, we recognize that we did not have a lot of gender diversity in technology, in management, specifically women in leadership, women in management. And I'm sure that's a problem that a lot of the folks that are on this webinar have dealt with as well. So we really took a specific approach to identify women that would have an interest in getting into management leadership roles and creating a development experience to basically enhance, number one, are they interested in management and leadership? And number two, how do we then create an environment where they get the opportunity to build those skills, practice those skills, and then ultimately be able to, become a manager and a leader in the function to be able to, execute in that area. And that was a really important piece of a variety of aspects, because I think we all know more gender diverse teams, there's more creativity, there's more discussion, there's more debate. And it was important to be able to demonstrate to the organization that we were serious about this, but that it also helped us in our recruiting when people would be looking to come into the organization. Everyone's asking the question, but actions speak louder than words. So do you have diverse teams? Do you have leaders that are like me, women maybe coming out of undergrad programs or graduate programs that maybe want to aspire to be in leadership roles? So that was a program that I think worked really well. And I think continues to be a key part of the strategy, because you're always looking to enhance the leadership profiles of your organization. So.
I have a follow-up to that. We talked about, oh, go ahead, Omar.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask, you talked about that program working really well. So what were some of the key indicators from your end that how did you know that it was successful?
Well, obviously the end state being we saw more women in roles. I mean, it was clear we were able to manage that. I think one of the big challenges you have in any development program is most of the measurements are lagging indicators versus leading indicators. Like, are we actually making progress? I think one of the things, that I've liked, and even particularly about this platform that Growth Space has, is you get real-time information and data about, is the development actually working based on feedback that the individuals are getting as they go through their coaching. What we did was we had a number of programs that were set up to, number one, put individuals through, whether it be thought leadership type programs, whether it be programs in which they would be part of guest speakers and lecturers that would come in. There was also a variety of projects, which I thought was really the most important aspect, where a lot of our leaders in technology would give this cohort specific challenges that maybe they were facing in the business, and say, let's give this group something to work on, and more importantly, then be able to come back and demonstrate not only how they worked as a team, but also what are some of the solutions. And you would start to see within these cohorts who was really taking leadership roles. And I'm not talking just the person who presented at the end of the sessions, but we would have sponsors come in and be able to identify how work was being done and how the teams were being organized and things of that nature. So to answer your question, Aaron, I think that the success factors ultimately were, did we move the needle? And did we see that we did have more of a gender diverse leadership and executive team? But we also then had leading indicators around how people were doing as they were in those projects and programs. I think that was really important. And you really have to have leadership actually demonstrate a level of sponsorship here. They can't just say, this is something we want, which is why having them sponsor some of these teams, having them observe how the organization or how this cohort was working together, I think was really important to demonstrate the effectiveness.
Yeah, that makes sense. They want to give that chance for the practical application and then be able to observe, those behavior changes. So Omar, I didn't mean to cut you off earlier. Did you have another question or comment?
I know. Just one reflection. I think one thing that Paul commented on is the measurement piece. And I think the measurement piece is a big question in any program. Now, a succession-based program or like a specific DEI programs, I think the advantage of them is it's very easy to measure, because eventually you're targeting a cohort that's supposed to be promoted, and then you're measuring like the actual percentage of promotion after a specific period of time. But then the downside of that is there is a specific period of time. So maybe within a year you can measure that, and even then, how do you know that your program actually like contributed if there weren't other confounding variables, for example? So we really like the A/B testing concept of, basically, let's say you have a cohort like up for succession. So just in order to see that this thing works, sometimes at first you would kind of like define test group and control group. One will get your program, one will not, and then you will see the difference maybe 12 months after, but you also have measurement points in between. So like you said, you have the direct feedback of the participant. How was the program? Was it good? Was it impactful? And so forth. Now, this is maybe the most biased, because self-reporting is biased in general. And then the second level is the manager's feedback. The manager is much less biased. And you ask the manager, do you see improvement in the specific thing that you're trying to achieve? Then the third level would be kind of like the functional performance, because these people work and they have KPIs. So you're trying to see if there was an impact on their KPI. And then the fourth level would be the actual level of like basically the success of promotability.
Well, Omar, I think what you're saying, and we, again, all the folks that are part of this have probably had the question, do these work and what do they cost? Okay. And it's such a basic question, but it's not always the easiest to get the data. And I brought up earlier, there's lagging factors, because then you can go and say, right, how many of the folks that were in the program got promoted, or how many took a new job, or is their performance increased based on how they were rated and compensated year over year? How do you measure that? But those are all indicators that take time. And I think having the opportunity to be able to get real-time feedback, and more importantly, are they improving? So because the individuals that are in these programs are going to want to also understand, is this actually, am I benefiting? I mean, I'm going to these classes and I'm working with these coaches and I'm working on these projects, but to them, they're asking, so what also? So they're looking for feedback. So it's not just the managers and the leadership, it's the individuals that are in them as well. So I think the opportunity to provide that leading feedback and indicator tying into KPIs is really important, because then what it does is it gives you more data as an HR professional to really explain the impact that development can have and why the investment makes sense, versus a lot of people, you feel like you're always going in and asking for more, but then you don't really have a lot of basis of why you're increasing your budget or why you need them to continue to keep your budget at X. And I think that's a real challenging aspect for any CHRO or CLO or head of talent right now in the industry.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Omar. So we talked a little bit about, how do we know a program is successful? But Paul, what are some of the key challenges that you've run into with segmentation, and how did you deal with them or overcome them?
Yeah, there are challenges because anything that you will be doing in an organization, people will find out about, okay? And they'll say, why not me? And I think it's important as an organization that, and I mentioned prioritization and communication, that the goals of what you're trying to achieve and why are out there. So let me go back to the example, more gender diversity in leadership, okay? It was important for our head of technology, our business line CIOs to actually share information with their teams and with their organizations about what that problem really was. It kept us, again, from having organizations that we believe would have more creativity, more challenging conversations. It felt that the organization was operating all in a consistent way as opposed to in a way that was going to challenge each other. And I think everybody on this call, I'm sure, is well aware of why we want more diverse teams. But we had to go out and continue to communicate that, because there are other people that would say, well, hey, I want to be a leader and a manager also. And it's not to say that they couldn't be and that there wasn't going to be a development experience for them. However, when there's a strategy in place and it's been a priority of the business, that has to be communicated, and has to be communicated more than once and more than twice, that people understand the value and the reason and how that's going to have impact. So an example being having more women in technology. There's data that was out there that showed that products that were being built in the financial service industry were more male dominant in terms of the thinking around how the product was being built and the tools were being built. And we had feedback from focus groups and women that were trying to use some of the tools on our website that were saying, these just aren't resonating for me, and here's why. And it was important to realize we did not have enough of the perspective of that customer base. And in many cases, it's because the leadership was predominantly all male. So in order to actually have more effective customer satisfaction, that they were using the tools, that they were seeing more of an overall satisfaction with your business, you needed to be able to build that into your overall strategy around building IT products. So I think when you prioritize and you segment, you clearly need to be able to demonstrate why. And people may not like the answer, but you need to be able to tell them the why. And I think it may be a situation where they'll say, okay, at least I understand why this is an area of focus, versus being something that, it's the flavor of the day because everybody's worried about DEI. So I think that that's important. I think other programs, we spent a lot of time with new hires. We wanted to create an experience for them coming into the organization, and we got a lot of feedback that people really only understood their specific vertical of the business. So as we had new hires come in, we had some, real specific rotational programs for them to be able to learn multiple aspects of the business. And what was interesting was we'd have people that were here 10, 15 years raising their going, hey, I would like that. I don't understand what goes on over in those businesses. And it was actually helpful to us because we were trying to drive more mobility in the organization, and it gave my team more of a platform now to go off and establish programs and communication to kind of help more mobility across the company. So by prioritization, by segmentation, you get a lot of different feedback where you realize, hey, there's a group of people right now that, hey, they've been here a while. They're looking for their next role. They're looking to learn more about different aspects of the company. We as HR professionals now have to help create that path and give them that learning to be able to go ahead and progress in that area if that's something that's one of their goals and objectives.
Great, I love that. So articulating the why is really important, making sure that people understand the strategy behind it, because ultimately this is what we're talking about, challenges, right? But this is a good problem to have, right? More people want to get into your programs, so that's great. Thank you for sharing that.
Aaron,
So
if I could just,
oh,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
if I could just mention one thing though.
Yeah.
A lot of leaders, they need to hear that it's okay to say why and it's okay to say no. And a lot of them don't want to do
Yes.
that. So I think it's important, again, that people may not like the answer, but at least they feel that they've been heard. And that's an important aspect, as opposed to it feeling like there are these, quote, secret programs for, quote, special people, and I'm not a part of it. So sorry to interrupt, but I think that that's important.
No, I agree. Thank you for sharing that. So how do you balance really this need for the personalized learning and scalability when it comes to, launching programs across a large organization?
I think that there's a couple different factors that play in. When you think about scale, okay, let's face it, there is not enough HR people in companies to be able to provide the level of coaching and development that organizations need, whether it be new managers, whether it be mid managers, emerging executives, whether it be, hey, we want to develop a high potential group of DEI associates or cohorts. So I think one of the things that's exciting to me, and you talk about why we're here, is that ability to provide scale is the platform that, I know Fidelity in Canada currently is using, which is the growth space platform, because you can reach a lot of people at one time, but they get a personalized experience. And that's really difficult to do. I know we've all done executive coaching. We do that. It's a really important part of providing our executives with the ability for them to develop, but it's very expensive. It's often very time consuming. And what I found is that everybody says they're supportive of development, but how much time are they not going to be able to do their job? And they're going to have to be either off the phone or off the keyboard or not working with the team. So that's a real balance and a real struggle that I think people really have to deal with and think about when they put forward that development agenda for the organization. How do you drive scale? How do you do it cost effective? How do you personalize? And I think there's ways to do that. I think, like I said, one of the exciting things about your platform is you're able to do that. I think there's challenges when you can't be everything to everyone. And once you get into situations where you have a specific organizational need, and a lot of times it's a global need. These are managers and first line managers that may be all over the world. It's hard to get to them, but that they are such a key component. If you're an organization, as an example, you're running large call centers, you have a lot of turnover at that, early career. The manager plays such a key role in ensuring that those individuals are doing well, that they feel that they're progressing, that they can have a conversation about their career. Those managers need training and support to do that. And it's so hard to get to them. So,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Omar,
just
do you have any thought? Oh, go ahead.
one thought about that. I think it's very important. Most organizations, especially the large ones, when you have tens of thousands of employees, and you have a lot of people in a lot of different countries, and you don't want your base. The US, it's very easy to provide a really good training, but what's happening in Europe, what's happening in Asia? So you want to create consistency because eventually it's part of your culture. And eventually everything is connected. One thing I like about ServiceNow, one of our customers, is they're trying that everyone will know the sales pitch, right? It's a very top-down direction from the CEO that they're trying to create consistency with whatever they do. And I really admire that. And I think talent development is just one part of that. So if you're offering something In the US, you need to basically offer almost the same experience with the same guidelines, with the same goals, with the same objectives to basically globally, kind of like creating consistency.
No question. I think that that is a really important point because it has to be, to your point, consistent, but also you don't want organizations that say, okay, well, I'm based in India and we don't get this, but the folks that are based in Ireland or, in the US, they get that. Why can't we get that? And again, it comes back to, and I know it's a basic thing, but leadership and communication and being able to communicate those priorities is so important for the leaders, for the heads of HR, for the heads of talent, the learning heads. Everyone needs to be on the same page. But at the same point, people need to understand that you may pilot something in one part of the world, but that the objective is to then provide and drive that scale. So.
Right. Well, with just a few moments left, I wanted to transition to just answer some questions that are coming in through the chat. So one of them is, what strategies do you recommend to assist leaders in breaking down the overall objectives, you talked about that earlier, into understandable language and actionable steps for their teams?
No, it's a great question. I think you have to do it and I think the key question is understandable language. Okay.
Yep.
And sitting with a business head or CEO and saying, let's map out what are the top 2 or 3 challenges that your organization has heading into the year. Okay. They list the challenge. Okay. What do you need people to do or do differently to meet those challenges? Get them to talk about what the problem is. They don't want to hear a lot of, quote, fancy HR language. So get them to articulate, okay, here's what we need them to do. Here's what we think the problem is. And where is that gap? And based on that gap, how do we then build a development strategy to support that? But the key thing is they need to dictate to you how they see it so that you can then go back and provide a solution. Often a lot of organizations say, well, you're HR, you should be able to come back and tell us. Okay, we can do that, but I really need to understand from your perspective, what is keeping the organization from meeting these goals and objectives? They may say, well, we have a problem with the technology and the vendors we're working with, blah, blah, blah. Okay, what do we need to do differently there? Well, the people that are working with those vendors need to be a lot different in terms of how they hold them accountable and blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, they've just kind of now outlined as a strategy where maybe we need to have some conversations and training people around negotiation. Maybe we have to have a program around more effective communication in negotiation with vendors, understanding what are some of the key competencies that keep us from getting those organizations to understand what needs to get done. They may not think of it that way initially because they're just upset that the vendors are having outages and it's impacting the customers. So as opposed to the people got to do better, of course they have to do better, but what is keeping them from doing better? Exactly. So my advice is really simplify that message and get that leader, that executive to talk and share what their issues are, that then you're able to understand, okay, here's where the problem is. Okay. And here's what we have to help people get better at.
Exactly. Well, we are right at time, but Omar, I want to give you a chance. Do you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I think it connects to the topic of this session. It's about personalization. If you have high-level goals, you're trying to translate it to actionable teams for each manager with their team. Each manager is unique and each team is unique. And eventually, something I just had a one-on-one with one of my direct reports, and she asked me, how would I like to structure something that like she needs eventually to do? And I told her, I'm not doing, like, it's your work, right? So you need to do it the way it works for you, because you have a long career behind you and you have your ways of work. And I think the challenge is sometimes translating something which is more or less generic, because the goals are the goals, to a unique circumstances with a unique manager. So it's about personalization, and it's about basically precision of supporting someone with doing this like complicated translation to a team with a unique needs, unique characteristics, unique challenges, and managers with unique ways of work. So the generic solutions usually do not work, and then it's basically going 2 levels below with personalization, and you actually need to work with each manager in order to do this tailoring to the unique team and unique ways of work of the manager.
Right, to really understand the specific roadblocks that they're having, right, and being able to remove those. Well, thank you, Paul. Thank you, Omar. We did 31 minutes of growth today instead. So thank you both for joining. It was a very interesting discussion, and we'll be posting an article with some of the key takeaways on our website. So thank you all, and we'll see you next time.